Labour got it wrong on immigration when it was in power and failed to impose stricter controls, the party leader Ed Miliband has claimed. In a break with the past, he said British workers should not be locked out of jobs, calling for recruitment agencies, which only use foreign workers, to be banned. And he said voters worried about rising immigration shouldn't be dismissed as bigots. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis reports.
First of all, I should say something. I'm the son of immigrants.
Ed Miliband addressing factory workers this afternoon in Peterborough. And it was all about immigration, as it had been at an earlier speech in London. Immigration, the benefits, but also the costs, the hidden stories, as he put it, which made people angry and which his party had for too long ignored.
I think quite simply, we became too disconnected from the concerns of working people. We too easily assumed that those who were worrying about immigration were stuck in the past.
But all these Eastern Europeans what are coming in, where are they flocking from?
A million people come.
How the last Labour leader learned the cost of getting it wrong on immigration, famously confronted by Gillian Duffy in the run-up to the last election, then forgetting to turn his microphone off moments later.
That was a disaster. Well, just everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman. Said she used to be Labour.
But when I talk about immigration...
Now listen to what Ed Miliband had to say today.
Worrying about immigration, talking about immigration, does not make them bigots.
Bigots. It was a very pointed reference. Ed Miliband was being about as clear as he could be. Labour under Gordon Brown lost its way badly on the immigration debate. In essence, the party had become too disconnected from the Gillian Duffys of this world. And yet, as much as he tried to distance himself from the language of Gordon Brown, you couldn't help but get the feeling that in part he was trying to fine-tune an old argument which his predecessor had begun.
British jobs for British workers.
British jobs for British workers. Ed Miliband wasn't going to promise that, but he did say it was time for working people to be given a fair crack of the whip. He talked about local talent being locked out by cheap immigrant labour. So his big idea is this. He wants to double the maximum fine for employers who pay less than the minimum wage to £10,000. He wants to create an early warning system to notify job centres of businesses where migrants make up more than 25% of the workforce. And he wants to strengthen the law to stop recruitment agencies hiring only foreign workers, such as agencies in industries like construction, which he claimed boast that all their workers are Polish. One employment lawyer told Channel 4 News strengthening the law is not the issue on this, enforcing it is. As for the Tories, they dismissed it all as a little thin.
He identifies the problem that the last Labour government got immigration horribly wrong, and he's apologised for that, as he has done before, but actually didn't come up with any solutions to the big issue, which is that immigration has been running at too high a level, and does he support the various measures we've been taking in government to bring it down?
Caps, limits and numbers, said the Labour leader today, would be looked at. But it was time, he said, for a far more sophisticated, economically focused debate on immigration.
Well, joining me now is Hilary Benn from Labour's Front Bench, and here in the studio, Anya Heasley, who runs a recruitment agency exclusively for Poles in England. Anya Heasley, why do you only hire Poles?
It wasn't my decision to hire Poles exclusively. My company responded to clear request and demand from employers in this country to employ Polish people.
English employers? Saying they only want Poles?
That when they come to me, to my company, to my recruitment company. The clue is in the name, Anya's Poland. When somebody contacts me, there is no doubt that we provide services for Poles and recruit and source Polish workers for British companies, for English companies.
So, Hilary Benn, you would close down Anya Heasley's business, would you?
No, I wouldn't say that, but what I would say is it's not fair if there are recruitment agencies that are only recruiting from one section of the community. And I suppose the question that I would put is if someone had been born and brought up in England, came to the recruitment agency and said, I'd like to be on your books, what would be the answer?
We would be very happy to put anybody on our books, but that's where they would stay, unfortunately, in our case, because the employers, where they contact me, they want to be very clear that I provide poles for their businesses. So yes, of course, we accept everybody on our books. Sometimes we get people sent from the job centre, but they don't get jobs through our company. And it's not because I don't put them forward, it's because the employers are not interested in them.
Well, Hilary Benn, that could mean that, you know, changing the law, if you like, or tightening the law would be a bit meaningless, wouldn't it? Because, yes, you know, employment agencies might welcome everybody, but still only hire out people from one community.
Well, I think this conversation has just illustrated the problem that Ed Miliband was talking about today, which is why one of the practical proposals that he's put forward is we should look at the way in which recruitment agencies and indeed employers work, because it's not healthy for society if certain jobs are only open to one sector. And look, he's been very frank today in saying that on the accession countries we should have imposed the controls to limit the flow of people coming in.
Yeah,
look, we need to have an honest...
That? Because, I mean, where's your evidence that that was a bad thing for the British economy? Do you have any
Well, I think...
figures that prove it?
I think in relation to the economy, clearly there have been enormous economic benefits generally from migration, and we are a nation that has been built on successive waves of migration over the years. I am myself the son of a migrant, but the public is concerned. Just talking to my constituents, people are worried about whether the opportunities are being shared.
But are they right? Are people right to be concerned? I mean, was the economy badly affected?
I think it's perfectly... Well, some workers would say we've seen wages undercut, we think that we haven't had a fair crap of the whip, and that's why I think it is important to look at what can be done practically, making sure, for example, that whether people come from abroad or were born and brought up in this country, that they're paid the minimum wage, so doubling the maximum fine, looking at the Gangmasters Licensing Authority, which we ourselves established in government after the terrible disaster in Morecambe Bay, to look and see whether that should be extended to other sectors.
But the Conservatives
it must be right to have an open and honest and grown-up conversation
Sure.
about the benefits and some of the concerns that people have got. And as Ed Miliband said today, if people are concerned, it does not make them bigots. And it's really important. We should be able to have a free and frank conversation
as Gordon Brown described one voter at the last election famously. But I mean, the Conservatives say you still will not agree with them that too many immigrants came into Britain. Is that right? I mean, do you think too many immigrants came to Britain?
We've said today, Ed Miliband has said today, in relation to those who came in from the A8 countries, we should have imposed those controls. Had we done so, then fewer of them would have come during the course.
Too many came in?
Fewer of them would have come during the transition period. That is self-evidently the case. The problem for the government is they've got this cap. So far, it has failed miserably to achieve the objective that they've set. In fact, it only applies to a very small proportion. We've said that we will look at the cap as part of our policy review, but it only applies to a very small proportion of the migration that's coming into the country. The significant part is EU migration, and that is why Ed Miliband focused on that today and what he had to say, both in recognising what we hadn't got right, but also setting out a range of practical proposals, including at looking at how we can improve the skills of people born and brought up in this country so they have a chance to take part in the jobs that are being offered, and that they should not be solely for those who come from some of the accession countries, as the case of the recruitment agency we've just heard demonstrate.
Well, let me come back to Anya Heasley. I mean, how do you feel about that? You know, Labour is now saying too many people came in.
Well, a lot of people did come in, but that was the economy of, I can only speak about Poland and Britain at the time. Britain was a very attractive country to come and work. Can I just make one comment? I agree with one point that because all the Eastern Europeans came and they took all the menial, lowest paid jobs, this gives an opportunity for local people to upgrade their skills and to get better jobs. They should be happy with all the Eastern Europeans taking the jobs that nobody wants, and that gives them a chance to get better jobs.
Well, on that note, Anya Heasley, Hilary Benn, thank you both very much indeed.